Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of the series of talks organized by Liberty Books on the stained glass window. I am Taha Keher and I am the co editor of this anthology. And before we get into introducing our guests, I wanted to say something about the experience of putting this book together. When we started out, we thought we'd get these really dark, depressing stories, and we didn't expect lighter narratives, stories that looked at the positive side of things, the optimism, the humor that we could also explore in these COVID-19 stories. And the few stories that did do that surprised us a great deal. And the two stories that we got that had some degree of optimism, that had some degree of humor, um, were by these two authors. And they're two of the many stories we have that are somewhat lighter in nature and they look on the lighter side. So I like to introduce my guests. I have on my right Nirvan Nadeem. Nirvan is an actor for TV and stage. He has performed for Joka plays such as Dara, Bulla, and Burkavaganza, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nowadays, more than acting, I am running a performing arts organization these days, Ajoka.
Yes, you are
So
the
that's my main
director
role.
of the Ajoka Institute, and you pioneered online acting classes as well. Um, though this is your first work of fiction, I believe you write columns for the Daily Times. And
Yes, the last work of fiction I wrote in my school days, I think.
uh, so this must have been a great experience for you. And
Yeah.
to my left, I have Huma Sheikh, who is a teacher. She's based in Karachi. She's taught at the Karachi Grammar School and has a degree in child psychology and education. And this is also her first work of fiction. So before we get into this, the first thing that came to mind when we came up with this book of short stories was, okay, who's going to write short stories? कौन इस वक्त में लिखेगा ऐसी कहानियां COVID-19 के ऊपर? तो I just want to know आप लोगों का क्या inspiration था when you decided to write these stories. Nirvan's story is called Corona Man, which is an intriguing, a clever tale of misconceptions about COVID-19. It has a rural setting, and Huma's story is Gulmohar House, which has a complete focus on the private sphere. So I just want to know what were your inspirations for these stories?
Um, should I go first?
Whoever wants to go first, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hello, Taha, and hello, Nirvan. And it's a pleasure being here. I'll just take a moment to say thank you to Liberty Books and to Taha, and for for organizing this. And what a wonderful opportunity and precedent this was, compiling the anthology, and which encompasses and encapsulates different genres of writing, which were produced during the COVID times. So this is a first of its sort in Pakistan, as far as I know, and it's been a delightful journey throughout. So yeah, and coming to your question about what was the inspiration, well, the lockdown days, which were just like it's been almost a year, and this idea came across with me when we were right in the midst of the lockdown. And at that time, even though we had some people would have been still working, even if from home, but it was a very different set of norms that the world was adjusting to. So at that time, to explore one's creativity and then to delve into writing, and that was something, yeah, that was new. But the inspiration was that with a new set of norms, and the COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown and the long period of quarantine brought around a new set of norms for the entire world in its wake. And that was no doubt the basis of almost all the stories in the anthology. And then my story focuses on a small family, a single mother and her two children, who are isolated from the world while at the same time being productive members of the society. And there were it's a very different it was a very different scenarios have been put forward in the anthology, and mine deals with a single mother and then the all that the family faces. And the protagonist is while dealing with her home life, she's following a structure, and then she's following the ideals of her childhood, and she keeps going back in her memories and drawing inspiration from her past to for strength and to carry on with with the challenges of the world around her. And so the Gulmohar house is her ancestral home, which doesn't exist anymore in reality. But because she spent such an idyllic childhood over there, she still draws upon it for strength and courage, and for inspiration to go forward and to deal with the challenges of the world. So that's it. That's
All
about it.
right, that's great.
And
Nirvan, what do you think? What was your inspiration for Corona Man?
Yeah, exactly. As first of all, as Humal said, congratulations to all of you and all of us, I guess. And
Congratulations
I
to
really
you.
do feel, and I really do feel that this is a landmark book because it'll allow us many years afterwards, like maybe even decades afterwards, to really look back and ponder and reflect. Well, for me, there was no dearth of inspiration. In fact, there was nothing else to do apart from getting inspired. Because in the initial days, when the lockdown was so strict, the paranoia was so high, and the isolation was so hard in a way that there was, in a way, I counted it as a blessing because otherwise one is involved unthinkingly in this kind of rat race or just the wind and grind of daily life. And for me, it kind of felt that as a collective whole, all of humanity had a chance to just take a deep breath. And one of my the reasons, one of my motivations or inspirations would be that I got married in the first week of the first lockdown in Corona,
Oh, wow,
and that was
congratulations
a whole,
on that.
yeah, thank you, and that was a whole episode in itself. If we and you see, I am the sort of person as well who always likes to see the silver lining, and it's all a matter of your perspective. You can look at this entire situation, and many people, including myself
Mhm.
a little bit, many people I know, they went into depression, not having human contact, not having social interaction. But if you just shift your perspective, and that was the basis for my story as well, that my initial thought was to write this really deep, dark, for depressing, foreboding story. But I chose to look at this whole situation in a different light, in a unique light. And if you look around you, there are so many instances and so many stories that you can see. Um, uh, like even now, if I'm going somewhere, the other day I was going out for grocery shopping in the Mall of Lahore in the basement, Green Valley, and I was walking about with an N95 mask and already in the basement, and so out of nowhere I was attacked because I suddenly someone called out my name, Nirvan. I turned around and it was someone I vaguely remembered or was vaguely
Uh-huh.
acquainted with, and he stood a few feet away from me, and I didn't recognize him. He took off his mask. Then I said, still not recognizing him, I gave a big smile and said hello. gave an even bigger smile and then jumped at me with big, wide open arms. And I had to
Wow.
push him midway that, dude, no, please. And even now, if I go to the gym, every other day someone manages to pounce on me. So people are still getting to the hang of it. Um, so if we come to the inspiration, so everything was set of me getting married. The jodas were made, the venue was booked, and everything was up and ready. The cards were printed, and
Mhm.
1 week before we were getting married, half of the house was in fact under construction. So 1 week before we got married, 1 week before there was a strict lockdown, and I live in the Kent. And in Kent, during those days, even the Fauji's, they weren't even letting the residents go in and out without like a valid reason. So अब ये वक्त पड़ गया कि अब जो दुल्हन आएगी, जो द न्यू ब्राइड टू बी, वेयर भी वो रहेगी किधर, क्योंकि आधा घर ही जो है आपका अभी अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन है. So sometimes it would happen that the Mazdoos would be allowed to enter Kent, but the material, the bricks and all, they would be stopped at the Naka. At other times, the material would be allowed to come in, but the Mazdoos would be stopped from coming in. So then we figured out various ways of getting them inside, and finally everything managed to take place. So from there, and for me, it wasn't a depressing thing. I took it as, again, a blessing. It was there was simplicity in it, and it ended up being just between the two of us rather than being about show off, because normally weddings are just about who you're calling, how many guests you have, how many lakhs you have spent on the decorations. So in the same way, I chose to look upon this situation in a positive light as well.
So do you feel more people should be looking at it in a lighter vein, in a positive light, or
Yeah, I mean,
do you?
after you take the necessary precautions, right?
Mhm.
So both extremes are bad. One extreme is like those dangerous people who attack you randomly, who are walking about in their banyans, just
Mhm.
wanting close contact for no reason, and I'm quite uncomfortable with that even in normal circumstances. But the other extreme also is that you cannot just shut off yourself and live in paranoia. I mean, so many WhatsApp
Mhm.
groups, so many of my family. I mean, then I am the one thrown under the bus because one person sends some paranoid message on the family WhatsApp group. One day someone sent that Corona stays on newspapers, and in those days, I was not meeting anybody, I was not talking to anybody. And then suddenly, it was decided, oh, newspapers are too dangerous. So,
You
both
stopped reading
extremes.
newspaper.
No, I still did, in an illegal kind of way.
Uh-huh.
But both extremes are bad. So the middle ground should be followed. And uh, definitely in a lighter way, because if you look at it now, obviously, your physical social interaction has diminished, and now
Exactly.
people are okay meeting each other with social distancing, or restaurants are now
Mhm.
open outdoors and everything. But so much good has come of it as well. Like for me, our Ajoka's acting classes, which were going on extremely well, they obviously had come to a certain stop.
Mhm.
So then I moved those classes online. And although it was difficult, because how do you teach something? I mean, teaching some other subject is still relatively easier. Acting depends so
Mhm.
much upon, close interaction, physical
Exactly.
proximity. So teaching that was quite challenging. So, but I had a lot of free time on my hands. So
Uh-huh.
eventually I figured out a way, and still I wasn't sure if people would join or not. There were a long list of registrations.
Interesting that you
So
mentioned online because Huma's story, Gulmohar House, has a protagonist who also goes and does everything online. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about that, Huma? The shift online that your character Rubab in Gulmohar House makes. And do you think that makes her a bit of an optimist in these difficult, distressing times?
Yes. Just giving you delving a little bit into the story that Rubab, the protagonist, has made very, I would call her a visionary.
Uh-huh.
She has all through her life, she has ever since she entered young adulthood, she has made decisions on her own uh, that that were very beneficial for her and then her children's future for in the long run. And whether it would be just like uh, carving their pathways through life, or choosing to stand up and go out, even though she came from a very protected background and a very protected family structure, to stand up, to go out and work. And then so I would call her a survivor, right? And then she when when we enter lockdown, so then there is just like Nirvan said, there is no other choice. You cannot have close physical proximity at that time. So then she, even though she tells her cousin who advises her that put your lessons online on YouTube or go online, and she says I'm not that tech savvy. But then she sees there is no other choice, and then she has to make that move. So then so there is a sense of positivity, and there is a lot of resilience that we see in the main character, that you have to. And then that is there, that throughout the story you see that she adapts to the situations in the best possible way. So so she is, that is there, so she takes her lessons online, and that is the norm for the rest of the COVID period, the lockdown. That the children, she has these classes going on, and then the children cannot come anymore when the curfews and the quarantine period is set. So then uh, she she takes her work online. And so this is one thing that we see that is quite, that resonates right throughout the story, that she is always like looking towards the future. So we see a sense of optimism there, very strong, that how to make the best out of any given situation, not to bow
Mhm.
down and just give up, sort of a thing. And then she has to often make decisions on her own. But then that sense of preservation and a sense of optimism rules her, and she has to just move on, soldier on the best that she can. So yeah, that's
So
about
yeah.
it.
So Nirvan's protagonist in Corona Man is also out and about doing things. I think your protagonist, his story starts, Shazib's story starts in the Karakoram Mountains, and he's just going on with his life, conducting business deals, doing everything he needs to do. And do you think he is an optimist? Do you think he is someone who uh, just goes with the flow, even though whatever is happening around him is potentially distressing, difficult? He just keeps moving on, doing the things he has to do.
Well,
What can you tell us about it?
there's one paragraph in it, and initially, you see the whole story. Prefer to write in a stream of consciousness style. I don't really
Uh-huh,
uh, plan out every para beforehand, or the I don't even plan out how the story is going to end even beforehand.
uh-huh,
So initially, I had it wasn't supposed to be a light-hearted story, and initially. Uh, so this one paragraph in the middle, that basically is a kind of reflection of my own inner feelings and my own inner
mhm,
thoughts as well, and as I'm sure many other people around us would feel as well. Where just for a moment, as he's passing by, and he looks at those golden fields and the farmland and the open sky and the mountains, and just for those few seconds, he perhaps compares the two. He compares his own dull, everyday 9 to 5 life, which sucks out and zaps the energy out of you, and just sucks out the meaning of life, compared to these people. and these areas, and then he wonders that perhaps we are the ones to be pitied, not these villagers in a far off place of Pakistan.
So what I really enjoyed about your story, Nirvan, was the choice of setting. It was rural, but you still draw upon the urban man's experience in a rural setting. What do you think uh, across Pakistan, rural areas, do you think they were heavily affected by COVID-19? Did their lives change? Or as you've shown in your story, they became a bit more paranoid, more superstitious? There were misconceptions. What do you think about this?
Well, I haven't been to the rural areas recently in the
Uh-huh.
COVID situation, especially in the COVID situation,
Uh-huh.
obviously.
Obviously
But
not,
I would
yes.
assume, yeah, I would assume it wouldn't affect them as much because if from my interactions with like my maid, for example, the
Uh-huh.
other day I was she was making some food or something, and so recently the house was like from last month when again the coronavirus re-emerged stronger, and again the house was in a kind of semi-lockdown state, and the servants were basically the help was basically allocated a separate area to do the cooking and everything, and only allowed to come inside the house once or twice a week, and which apparently they weren't too fond of. So I mentioned something like this to her about the lockdown, and her reaction was, "Oh, ये तो सब उस explicit word उस flan flan का काम है,"
Uh-huh.
regarding our prime minister. So for her, it was just a big drama, and it was just these rich people playing games. So that is a common conception, and people are, uh, if you go to, for example, if you go to Liberty Market, I went to Liberty
Uh-huh.
Market some time ago, about 3 4 months back, and I was wearing a mask, obviously, and I hardly saw anyone wearing a mask, and people were just staring at me, were turning around and looking at me as if I was some kind of alien or some other entity. So it in
So what
some people
all
it hasn't
the
affected us.
so with all the conspiracy theories that were around you, with a maid telling you this is a sazish or this one saying something else, people staring at you, do you think that kind of created this idea of the Corona man that all the villagers in your story fear Shazib as being?
Yeah, unconsciously, yes, because I think that is our favorite pastime. We love
Uh-huh.
conspiracy theories, everything. We refuse to take responsibility for ourselves, and everything either is done by India, or it is done by Israel, or it is done by the white people. Or I remember once I was sitting for dinner outside somewhere with some old college friends, and I still remember him explaining me, quite not as a conspiracy theory but as a fact, of how the Americans, they have these big huge weather machines, and how the clouds you are seeing right now are because of the Americans, and how they cause, and this is actually quite a prevalent theory. It's not a very uncommon theory that actually the Americans cause these floodings, and they have these deep machines underground which cause these earthquakes. So same with Corona. There are lots of
So
theories. I'm sure you must be aware as well.
So it's fascinating how those theories play out. One interesting thing I noticed, and this was something I was trying to compare and contrast between your stories. Homa, your story is completely set in the private sphere, whereas Nirvan's is in the public sphere. Everything is out in the open. Yours is literally in hills and mountains, and uh, Huma, yours is very much in a tightly enclosed space. So I'll ask Huma first. Do you think your character is comfortable in that space? Is she adequately prepared to deal with the challenges of lockdown? in that space. And we have a lot of questions coming on the portal, by the way. And there's a lot of love and appreciation for your stories and the way you've spoken so far. So that's a good thing too. I'll read them out after you answer.
Thank you. Uh, well, yes, during the lockdown and quarantine period, while the entire world was suffering and it was an entire world which was like under lockdown, but it was literally at the end of the day, each man to himself or each family for themselves. So my story, yes, in the book delves on this one family, a single parent family, and for them, structure and routine has been their saving grace throughout, right? Since childhood. And like I said, for her, the main character, the protagonist, uh, she had a very solid childhood, a very
Mhm.
uh, grounded environment, and where she was well protected and she was pampered and she was well cared for, nurtured, nourished, whether it be intellectually, she had grown, and she was there till her early adulthood. And then from then on, we see her trials and tribulations, but then she maintains, even though whatever she faces in life, she stands her ground and she always comes out victorious. She so it's and what she refers again and again to, she refers to her past, all the nurturing she had received, even though now nobody from her uh, the initial family that she had, she's lost her parents, she doesn't have any siblings, she doesn't have any close family around her, and the family that is there are relentless, and they are like nosy, or they have nothing but jibes and taunts and a lot of unwanted questions for her throughout. So she has maintained a semblance of semi quarantine for herself and her children for a very long time. So when the COVID 19 rolled around and the world went into quarantine, it was not that difficult for that family to adjust themselves to the new norm, because it was something that they had already been doing. They had already been shielding themselves against the world for a very long time, almost the entire period of the children's life and her entire adulthood. They were very motivated and productive members of the society. They were, the children were pursuing their professional degrees, and she was working. But the thing is, but aside from, and they had a good, solid social circle going on. It wasn't that they were hermits, but aside from that, no family to fall back upon. So this was a family that had always relied on themselves, each other, and their home as their shelter against the world. And this is the entire essence of the story, that their home was their whole world. Whether it's coming together or studying or maintaining a structure and routine, or so it's like, and that's what the entire lockdown or COVID period brought about, that people, those
And do
who
you
were
think that's
even out and
sustainable
about,
for a protagonist
uh,
like yours?
when she even moves her work online. So it is, of course, there are moments when she feels lonely or she's fallible. So everybody, of course, wants human contact. But the thing is that then they show that she is maintaining contact like everybody else through WhatsApp or through the social media with her cousins who are not
Okay,
in the same country, or her friends. But
okay.
for her, that has been the norm. So for this time period, yes, it is sustainable, it has been sustainable, and we see growth and progression of the characters even through this, that
All right.
even then they have to step out of the lockdown, whether it's to go back to work or stuff like
So
that.
I'm going to invert your stories here. If Homa, your story was set in the public sphere and Nirvan, your story in the private sphere, how different would it be? I'll start with Nirvan. If
It's
Shahzeb was at home as opposed to out in the Karakoram Mountains.
We
then
exchange
about
stories over
then
here.
Yeah, then the name would have changed from Corona Man to like At Home Man or something. But
At home. What about you,
but
Hema? Yeah,
Yeah,
you were saying
exactly.
that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think the name would have changed, or probably not, because Gulmohar House was the hub or the center of all the love and nourishment that has sustained the character even now. So yes, we can just put her out in the world now. That's
and
interesting.
also
That's actually very interesting.
Ji, boli.
if it were in the private sphere, then the element of paranoia, I guess, would still be there,
Hmm,
only just within himself. And I know so many people as well in real life who really went through some
exactly.
weird shit, and there was a kind of brotherhood and sisterhood in that as well, because in the early days when you were shut off, and you took some solace from the fact that literally the entire world was in this with you and was going through the same stuff. If we just mention a little bit about the positivity aspect that we touched earlier, so
Ji.
uh, you know we realize the importance of human contact. Like if Shazeb was alone in this story, so at the end of the story he laughs and just moves on and goes on with his life. If he was
Hmm,
alone, he would have completely become paranoid. So because human contact is so important, human touch is so important. In this age of digital mobiles and cameras, now I guess we realize the importance of human interaction. And in a positive aspect, I feel we are now more connected than before globally. You have so many online activities, even us. I don't, would we have met in real life? Will we meet in real life? But here we are sitting together. You are having classes, you are having sessions, discussions, seminars with people from all over the world. Someone in America is interacting with someone in Gujarat. So that is a big positive point as well. And
exactly.
so many new ideas are coming to the fore as well.
So you're getting a lot of questions, and we're overwhelmed with the number of questions. So one question is from Mazhar Qureshi. Assuming that you guys wrote your stories in the earlier days of the pandemic, do you think your characters might be looking at things differently now?
Um,
Who would like to
do
go
I?
first?
Okay, do I go first? It's okay.
Yeah,
Um, should I go first?
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yes,
Or
I think just
whoever.
like Nirvan is absolutely right. There was a lot of paranoia in the beginning, in the midst of the lockdown and the quarantine period as well. We, there was absolutely no way to handle this. The death toll was just rising, and it was all just going haywire. And news, whether it was fake or real, you could not discern, and it was just flying left, right, and center. And and it even mentions in the story Gulmohar House that she's just washing her hands and just sanitizing everything all day long. So yes, the hype and the paranoia was there. And if I were to suppose write the story now, yes, the character might be a little bit more relaxed with the vaccine in sight, if not already there, and might have mentioned that. And there are better ways to handle it now. And the SOPs in order, in the hospitals or at home, people are generally more relaxed around the world. Yes. So,
Yeah.
and
What
and
about
those
you, Nirvan?
moments of angst that the character delves in, that that the panic attacks and the bouts of anxiety. So maybe that would have been a little bit more relaxed or better.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What about you, Nirvan? What would you say? Would he
But
be
I
looking
think
at things differently?
I think rather than running away, the people would have invited them inside their house for dinner, because they would have said, "Oh, Corona, no problem. We all have Corona. Everyone has gotten Corona 10, 15 times. No matter. Come on." And they would just have
Very
had a,
true.
had a lovely dinner together.
What about the next question? Could we have one? Yeah. Muniba's question is, Muniba Samad, thoroughly enjoyed your piece of writing, Huma. This is for you specifically. Do you plan on writing any book in future? I'll actually ask the
I
both of you this. Do you guys plan to keep writing fiction? Yeah.
I have already written another short story. It was required for a submission. It was about colorism and how the shades of skin, tones of skin color, even now affect the lives of girls and females in our country. Unfortunately, all over the world, but it's particularly touching upon our country, and how it plays havoc from right from their birth till whenever all their life, for and determines the course their life will take. And yes, I have started work, just the very initial stages on my novel, and let's see how that goes. I'm pretty excited about that. This Gulmohar House was a good start,
A
you
good
know.
start. What about you, Nirvan? Are you writing something?
Well,
Do
it's a
you
dream of
want to?
mine. Well, it's a dream of mine to actually write a whole novel. Obviously, a lot of time and effort is required in that, but it remains a dream. So far, I'm just writing columns and pieces these days for Friday Times and some other publications.
Mhm.
But it remains a dream,
So one
and
thing I noticed
hopefully
about your
someday.
story was the strong visual element. The fact that it almost read like a screenplay right at the beginning. It felt like you were seeing everything around you. And I thought it would maybe it has something to do with your theater background, all of that coming into play. Do you write with that in mind? Do you write with this image in
I
mind?
Yeah, when I'm writing something, I'm just describing what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. I have always been a very visual person. I studied filmmaking, so even at university, when we were making up a screenplay or thinking up a story, I always think in terms of in terms of visuals, and I don't think I can be able to write without actually seeing what I'm writing about. If I'm describing the feelings, if I'm writing about what the character is feeling or experiencing, I have to be experiencing that same feeling myself in order for it to be authentically be put on the page. Um,
That's great because you have a comment here looking forward to reading this book, especially Nirvan's initiative. So you have fans waiting for more. Could we have another question?
mm.
Okay, this is presumably for Homa. How would you trace Rubab's growth from childhood to the present day in Gulmohar House? Okay, let's not give out spoilers when you answer this because everyone should enjoy the experience of reading. So, a spoiler-free answer, please.
Okay. It's very interesting. Yes, Rubab, the main character in Gulmohar House, her character starts off as like I said, she's extremely protected and cared for and looked after, and she's very happy in that docile role. So she's, and then it changes, and she's forced to step up and take decisions, and she emerges as a very strong character. I hope that didn't give too much away. Yeah.
That didn't give too much
And
away at all,
from being
actually.
protected, and then she has to like be the caregiver, and
Yeah. Could we have another question or a comment? There are many. Um, Sharmeen Zakaria Sheikh. COVID has taught us so much about human condition. Great to see it being documented through a series of unique perspectives. Uh, what do you have to say for this comment, guys? Are you heartened? Are you humbled? What,
and yes,
Yeah, like
anthology.
building upon from yes, please.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead and join in later.
Okay. Um, well, interesting comment about the human condition because exactly if I share a small experience of mine, some years ago, a group of friends of old college buddies, we met in Ramzan for I think Iftari or Seri, and so I was seeing them after many years, and I was excited that, oh, we'll get to look back upon our experiences and talk about where we are. And so I was really excited. And surprisingly and astoundingly for me is that as we were sitting there, and I've met these old friends of mine after years, and both of them were just sitting right in front of me in the table on the table with their mobiles and just scrolling. And I was just sitting there looking at them that we have met after years, and you are just on your Facebook and Instas, and you see married couples constantly on their phones, parents and children. And through Corona, again, we have realized that a human being cannot function without actual human to human interaction. For me, that's the biggest lesson that Corona has taught us, the value, and not to take these things for granted, not to take the ability to even actually touch another human being for granted.
That's great. Could we have another question? We have Shaista Shahab saying she's excited to read the book. Thank you so much. And Nur Imran Khan says, what's next in store for you as an author? I don't know who you is over here, but it could be any of you. So
you as well. What about you? When are you writing your
Yes,
next?
yes,
this is
you're
not
the
about me,
author
this
as
is
well.
about you. So
You
what
are
would you
part
like
of the
to
book
write
as
next?
well.
Would you, Nirvan, want to write something more city-centric now, more urban, as opposed to something that is set completely in the rural setting? You did a great job with it, but what would you like to do next?
Well, for me, ideally, I don't get that much of a chance. That's why I grabbed this opportunity when Sana and you contacted me to write a fiction piece
Nice.
for my column. Obviously, I write about political situations, the social situations, and everything. But if given a free hand, and if given the amount of time, free time, then ideally I would really love to write something really fantastical, some otherworldly stuff in which there are
That's
different
interesting.
creatures or magical lands. So that's what I'm really
I
passionate
need that
about.
kind of escape in Corona times as well. So it's
Yeah.
good. What about you, Huma?
I did mention that I have
You mentioned your
started work
story, but
on
do you
a
have any idea, any plans of writing a
I have
book?
started work, and it's at very initial stages of a novel, and not really thought it through and through that how it's going and how and where it's going to go. But yes, I really enjoy writing, and it's something that I wanted to do since my childhood. I'm an avid
Mhm.
reader, but this is now I think it's the this COVID period and this anthology has been a perfect opportunity to finally write something, put it down, pen it down, and put it on paper. Yes. So this
So
was
can we
it.
have another
So,
question then? There's Naveed Sheikh who's saying we're so excited that it was your first venture. It went so well. I think for both of you, indeed. Another question or a
Thank you,
comment?
Ravi.
Nashmia Khan says, looking lovely and so graceful. Huma. Okay, that's sweet. What advice would you give to aspiring writers? I would put this question to both of you.
okay. So do I go first? I would suggest yes that read a lot, and don't wait that one day you are going to write. If you want to write, just write. Start writing now. Today's as good a time as any. So that's it.
Nirvan?
Yes, as Uma said, reading is the most important thing. Read, read, read. Nowadays, it's quite difficult. Even I read a lot less. I just read early in the morning these days. But reading is the most important thing, and reading any kind of thing, like anything. Read newspapers, novels, stories, anything, because
Exactly.
it's all to do with the imagination. And for any creative person, imagination is always the key, no matter what you do.
Okay. So this is Mazhar Qureshi again. Did you think of any other character or story before selecting the one you wrote, or did you always know you wanted to write about these characters? That's interesting. What do you guys have to say about that?
That's interesting. So,
Well, there were
um,
a couple of ideas.
Hmm.
I had about two or three ideas before it. At the end, I wrote the story about 2 days before it was to be submitted to you guys. Initially, I kind of wrote something from the point of view of the world, like the world as a consciousness or as a entity. Then I thought about writing something from a point of view style of this single person, just basically describing his inner feelings, and
Hmm.
then it gradually turned into the current Corona.
That's great. What about you, Huma?
well, to just at the very first thought that came was that I wanted to write something humorous, and I had a little plot going on. But then I thought, with the severity of the matter and the grave situation that we are in, it would also be a good idea to salute all the single parent families and the single mothers out there who are just striving there and soldiering on their own completely. And this story, I think, was meant to be. And that's what the beautiful quotes I read somewhere, that I think the story is there, and you just pull it out of the universe and you put it out there. So this was a story that had to be born or it had to be written.
So there's a lot that has been said on the chat forum as well. A lot of comments on, interestingly, Rubab's Huma's story, and Rubab's character, and that gives away a lot of the plot. So I'm assuming a lot of people have read Gulmohar House, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. But I have a few questions before we decide to end it. We have some time, and there is a question from Talha Naveed Sheikh. Are there any plans in the near future to follow up with another collaborative effort? I hope so, and I hope more people do such collaborative ventures, or just take these things further, because these are good ways of finding new voices and enriching new perspectives. Um, I just wanted to let you just get your thoughts on this. I ask every writer who's published in this anthology this question. Your books are out, your stories rather, are out in the open for everyone to read now. Um, there will be a lot of praise, a lot of criticism. How would you respond to that criticism? And what kind of criticism do you anticipate for your respective stories?
Do I go first? Okay, yes, I'm waiting. I'm really looking forward to, because this is my first venture, and it's been up till now, since, like, I think it's been a week or 2 weeks that the book has been launched, and I've only heard good things about the entire anthology. But yes, I'm waiting for some criticism. Criticism is always welcome and positive, and let's see what people have to say. You learn and you grow by, by well-meaning advice, whether it's in the form of critical analysis. So yeah, yeah, I'm ready for it.
What about you,
And
Nirvan? What do you think is going to be the biggest criticism, and how would you respond to it?
I don't think there ought to be any criticism regarding the content. Maybe over if someone is really fundamentalist or conservative, maybe about the the people being paranoid, or the people going around with uh, with their superstitions. Maybe that aspect, like so often happens in a if someone is mentally ill, they label them as being possessed by a jinn and all that. Apart from that, if regarding the writing and generally the structural piece, then I would welcome it. And in fact, I am a firm believer that constructive criticism is someone really doing your work for free, because if someone praises you, you feel good for a few moments, but it really has no long-term benefit. It is only through people criticizing you that you actually learn, and they actually are doing something for free that they should be paid for.
So I think there are a few questions that have emerged. Will you be issuing an ebook? I think Liberty Books is in a better position to answer that question. We hope so. And yeah, I think there are two more questions. Can you talk a little bit about the illustration on the book cover? Okay, so this illustration is
It's
that of
beautiful. It's
a
so
girl
vivid.
wearing a mask, and this is the world around her, moving from day to night. I think this image itself depicts that quite well. It's been done by a designer called Talha, Talha Keher, who is my brother, incidentally. So he did the cover design. So yeah, I
It's
think there was
beautiful.
one more question. Do the authors blog? Now that's fascinating. Okay.
Mm.
Do you? Do
No,
you
I don't,
write
unfortunately.
diaries or blog or
No,
anything?
I have book reviews going on my Insta page, but no, not any blogs as yet.
Yeah. What about you, Nirvan?
Uh, well, I used to write in my diary once upon a time, but you are not allowed
Uh-huh.
to read that. Apart from that, I write. So apart from that, I write semi frequently for. I used to write for the Daily Times every now and then. Now I write sometimes for the Friday Times, and one piece of mine is going to get published. I think this coming Friday, hopefully, or maybe next Friday.
Excellent. We should look
And it
out
is
for that.
about the yeah, it is about the online sphere basically. So that's where you can look out for me.
That's great. So as we conclude the session in a couple of minutes, I just wanted to, there's a message, kudos to Liberty Books for giving opportunity to budding authors. Indeed, Liberty
Definitely,
Books does need to be recognized for this
definitely.
initiative. So my last question to all of you would be, um, Homa, you're a teacher, Nirvan, you're an actor, and you are heavily involved in theater as well. How much of that went into your stories? Or did none of it go in? Was it just an escape from your realities?
Uh, Nirvan, for me. Okay. Yes. No, it was very easy to relate. The main character, the protagonist's predicament about how to what step to take during the lockdown. So so it was easy to portray her as a teacher because it was quite relatable. And
Indeed.
so as a mother or as a teacher, what would she have felt, and how she would have conducted her day, or how she would have structured her day. So yes, it was quite easy, to do that.
What about you, Nirvan?
Well, for me, I come across as quite an extroverted kind of person. Obviously, being an actor with the performing arts and the
Uh-huh.
direction and everything. But fundamentally, since a child, I've been quite an introverted person. And for me, writing is perhaps the only time I truly can be myself, and the only time where I can just express myself without any filters, without any censor, or without any political correctness or social etiquettes or social formalities. Um, so uh, it's kind of like therapy for me and kind of like an escape. And indeed, maybe
Mhm.
some elements, see the imagination part that plays a role in every single art form, from writing to dance, acting, music, painting. There cannot be any creative expression without the imagination. But writing is my kind of some passionate escape form through which I can keep in touch with myself in this materialistic world. and result-oriented world.
That's great. So you should check out their stories, Huma Sheikh's Gulmohar House and Nirvan Nadim's Corona Man in the stained glass window. It's available at Liberty Books. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to this lovely session. I had a great time chatting with my two guests, and I
Thank
hope they
you.
enjoyed the session too.
Thank you so much
And
for
thank you
having
so
us here.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taha and Sana. And